Okay. Hi, everyone. So this is a recorded session for the QI curriculum. Again, I'm Dr. Young. You guys all know me. Um, and so the focus of this week's session will be on analyzing the problem. Just again, an overview of the QI curriculum. Again, the main objective is to learn, but also apply QI methods and concepts to a QI project. And the goal at the end of this QI curriculum is that you will have done a QI project, and ideally it will be to a point where you can disseminate and present your work, either at Harbor or maybe at some at Solomon Scholars or Regional ACP. Yeah, here we go. So again, the model, IHI model for improvement, this is the improvement methodology we've been following. We did talk about lean and some of the overlap. Right now, we're still up here in the planning stage. What are we trying to accomplish? How will we know that a change is an improvement? Today's session will focus on what change can we make that will result in improvement. And so this is what we've gone over before. Again, we went over the lean A3 over here on the left and how it overlaps with the IHI model for improvement. You should have your aim statements done. It may change, but again, the aim statement is really critical for just stating and writing down what is your goal, what is the primary goal of your QI project. It might be something like improve or reduce the percent of inpatient glucose measures that are outside of the range of the normal range from whatever percent to whatever percent by particular date. And again, today's focus will be on planning your change. Last time we talked about what is the current state. I'll review some of those topics today. And today we're going to focus on analyzing the problem. And so what have we talked about before in terms of the current state? We talked about process maps or flow charts. I have a little bit more here than I went over last time. I think last time I went over a lot of like, how do you do it? What are these circles? What are these squares? And I think exactly what they are isn't so important for the context of what we're doing here. But the real purpose of using a process map is really to document the processes. And you're documenting what's the reality, like what is the actual process involved. It can help gain an understanding of existing processes, and it provides a visual aid and representation of roles and responsibilities. It can help analyze and improve on processes. Sometimes when you're writing things down, you start to come up with ideas of where are some areas of waste or risk factors, where are the areas where things aren't happening maybe the way they should be ideally, or where are the ways in which where are the steps in the process where errors can creep into the process. And also I wanted to mention as a credit, a lot of my slides I actually took with permission from the Society of Hospital Medicine Quality, Safety, and Educators Academy. It's directed at faculty. I'm happy to share more about what that is with anyone who's interested. What I didn't go over last time is that, process maps can be as detailed or as broad as you would like. Again, I think for our purposes, usually we're going to do a high-level flow chart. It's going to seem almost rudimentary, but it's literally, you start the process, whatever triggers the process, like a high sugar, an RRT is called, and then there's step 1, step 2, step 3. But then you can get much more detailed. And there's an example here of a really detailed flow chart. That's usually much more helpful for a process that has, and a QI project that involves a process that has multiple team members. It's incredibly complicated. And you're trying to just write down what is the process with all of the stakeholders in the room. And then there's something called a swim lane diagram. And here the swim lanes, this is why it's called the swim lane diagram. The swim lanes are particular roles or people. And as the process proceeds, the steps in the process will hop between swim lanes depending on who's who's responsible for that step. And so here, for example, patient arrives, the receptionist will check in the patient, the nurse will take the patient vital signs, the physician will treat the patient, and then the receptionist will check out the patient, right? And so that's a very simple example of swim lanes. And again, that's very helpful if you have this interdisciplinary team and you're trying to figure out whose roles are what. Here's an example. Again, I'll send these slides out. I'm not going to go over this in detail, but I think for those of you who are interested, you can spend some time looking at this just to see, what this might look like if you were to do a swim lane diagram. How do you create a process map? Again, we're kind of doing it on our own in groups of residents. And so the steps you're outlining, they may involve other disciplines, but as I keep mentioning over and over again, I think this QI project, if you're going to be successful, is really going to focus on the steps in the process that involve residents, that residents can have an impact on the process. And so that's why we were kind of proceeding with this very simple stepwise process map. So again, the steps are going to be defining the process, gathering data. In Lean, they say get to the Gemba. That means like going and actually observing what's happening, talking to the people who actually do the work, not the nurse manager, not the ICU director, but the actual RRT nurses that do the work, the actual residents that respond to the RRTs, not the attendings who are maybe not directly involved as much. Draw out the process, and then you want to validate the process. And again, the process you're writing down is the process that actually happens. And so, there may be some variation in the process, and that might be something to note in your process map as well. And then you want to analyze it. I'm going to, and I'll go over at the end of this presentation, I'm going to send out actually a PowerPoint deck that has some templates and things that you can complete. I think it will really help you kind of apply these tools to have something that you can complete. That's you just fill out kind of like a form. And so this is what's going to be included in the template is a very simple process flow map. And you could just put in, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5 for your QI project. I included this not to go over it again, because I think we've gone over process balance and outcome measures multiple times, but I'm going to include this in the template as well, and I'll go over it. But this is a way where you can document what are the measures you're going to go utilize in your QI project. And then we've talked about run charts. So what's the focus of today? This will be very brief, but I'm going to be talking about 2 tools. One is a fishbone diagram and one is a driver diagram. And you may or may not use one or both of them in your QI project, but you'll see these tools in QI a lot. And I think they're very helpful for taking your sort of brainstorming process of, what are the effects, what are the causes of, things not happening the way that they should ideally, the ideal state. What are some change, and it can kind of help spur on ideas of what are some changes that you might be able to test. So one is the fishbone. It's also called a cause and effect diagram. In Lean, they call it an Ishikawa diagram. I think it's named after the person who first used it, whose name was Ishikawa. They're all referring to the same thing. The reason it's called a fishbone diagram is because it looks like a fish with bones. And so what you have is a problem statement, which is the head. And then you have these different categories of things. And then under each category, there's going to be different causes. And on each cause, there might be some more detail here. And you literally just fill this in with what are the policies in place that, cause the effect? What are the procedures? What are the plans? It says plant there, but people, I'll go over some examples in a second. And so as you're brainstorming, I think one of the questions you want to ask yourself is why. And we do this in internal medicine all the time when we're coming up with like, why is, the hemoglobin low, right? And then it's like, well, because they're bleeding. Well, why are they bleeding, from, colon or where are they bleeding from? And so you want to ask yourself 5 whys. I mean, 5 is arbitrary, but you want to ask yourself why over and over again to try to get to the root cause of whatever it is. And I'll show you some examples to kind of elucidate a little bit more too. So again, this is a example slide from the Society of Hospital Medicine. Here, this is an example fishbone for low rates of health maintenance measures. And here's some categories that they came up with. Your categories may be different, but here the categories that they utilize are communication. So what are the communication factors that contribute to low rates of health maintenance measures? What are the ITEHR factors? What are the personnel and human resources factors? What are the educational factors? What's the culture issues that lead to this? And there may be a 6th category. And under each one, you brainstorm things that fall into that category. And having these broad categories helps you kind of make sure you're thinking about things that are in each category. So here, communication, maybe it's unclear what should be done. Maybe people are unsure how to document it. So that's why there's low rate of health maintenance measures. Maybe there's no sign out to other residents. So one resident is like, oh, we need to do this health maintenance measure, but they're not signing it out to the next resident. Or maybe the staff are unaware of the health maintenance to do. Maybe there's some language barriers in terms of ITEHR issues. Maybe there's not a way to see the mammogram results. So you're not sure if the mammogram has been done, or you can't really document. You don't know where to document it. Maybe you don't have access to the documentation. And again, this is an example not specific to Harbor. Maybe there's no reminder for fails. What are the personnel issues? Maybe there's a lack of clarity. Maybe this is one of those shared responsibilities where, it's really up to the nurse, the social worker, the lab, and the resident to do it. And sometimes when you have lack of clear roles, everyone's responsible or no one's responsible. So everyone's thinking someone else is taking care of it. Maybe there's an educational issue. Maybe people aren't sure what the health maintenance requirements are for different ages, right? Maybe the age cutoffs have changed and people aren't aware of it, or maybe the attendings aren't aware of it and they're not, holding the residents responsible for it. Maybe the intervals for mammograms, people aren't sure about, people aren't sure who to screen. And then culture. Maybe there's other more urgent issues. People are busy. There's no sense of ownership. There's no time. And again, these are examples. For years, it may look different. Here's another example. So for example, inadequate inpatient bowel prep for patients getting a colonoscopy. Again, this was an example that I had worked through when I went through the Quality and Safety Educators Academy with Society of Hospital Medicine. But some of the issues might be communication, where there's not great communication from the GI team to the primary team that a patient's actually going to go get a colonoscopy, when it's going to happen. Maybe the patient isn't well informed. Maybe the nurse isn't well informed that the patient's supposed to get bowel prep. Maybe the GI consults are happening too late. Is it verbal or written communication? Again, this was brainstorming, so there's not a lot of detail of what these things are. What are some process system factors? And you can see some of the categories are different here, but what are the process system factors? Maybe there's a lack of a standardized order set. Maybe sometimes the fellow does it, sometimes the primary team does it. It's a shared responsibility. And so, it's different each time. And so that's why, there's a lot of variation in the process, right? Maybe there isn't active follow-up of the prep process. Maybe people aren't sure how to follow up, or maybe the bedside nursing, isn't following up. Maybe they don't have orders to follow up, or maybe they aren't told to follow up, or maybe they're not sure what to do even if they're told to follow up. Maybe there's other procedures happening, so they're not getting adequate bowel prep because they're off getting hemodialysis or CT scans or something like that. Maybe there's worry about mobility or fall risk, and so nursing staff aren't pushing on the bowel prep as much because they're worried the patients are going to get up and fall. Maybe there's some health literacy or language issues. Again, maybe there's lack of understanding of what is adequate, what's clear in terms of bowel prep. Patients may not know what to expect, and so maybe they're not understanding that if they don't get adequate bowel prep, their colonoscopy is going to get canceled, or maybe they're not even told that they are going to get a colonoscopy. Maybe there's some myths, right? Maybe there's some myths about volume issues with bowel prep. And then maybe there's some medication issues. Maybe the patients are on opiates, so they're not, getting bowel prep because of that. Maybe the prep isn't available on the floor, and that's leading to delays in administration. Maybe the patient gets anticoagulation, and so that delays the procedure. So then the patient gets prepped when they're not actually getting the procedure. Maybe there's a lack of standard recommendations, and then environment. Maybe in the ED, they're not, it's not happening, or there's not access to the commode, or the patient privacy is an issue. Okay. So again, these are examples. I don't have it here, but in lean, these categories are usually, I think they call it the 5 M's. So machine, so that would be the equivalent of environment or materials. So machine, materials, man, methods, so that's like the process, and then there's another one, but I like using people, patients. So what are the people factors? Maybe there's a lack of staffing, maybe the right people aren't on the team. What are the patient issues? Maybe there's a lack of understanding on the patient side. What are the process issues? Maybe the process is wrong. Procedures or policies is what I mean. So maybe the policies aren't, clear or communicated well, or are incorrect. Sometimes people will put EHRIT on here. But I think the example that I left in the template, in the project template, looks more like this. And you may add a 6th category if you start coming up with things that aren't captured in one of these other categories. This is something called the Donabedian framework. I think it's helpful. Again, these are just tools to help brainstorming. This framework breaks down any process into structure, process, and outcome. So structure are like the attributes of the healthcare system, process. This has to do with measures. So this is actually not related to this. So I'll just skip through this slide. If you have questions about this slide, I can answer it later, but there's something called structural measures, which are measuring the attributes of the healthcare system. Sorry, that slide crept in there. This is a driver diagram, and I filled it in with an example from one of my previous projects. This, again, is a different sort of tool to help you when you're brainstorming, kind of analyzing the problem. Here over on the left, you would have your outcome, right? And so here, the example I gave is reducing daily lab orders. And so your outcome measure might be labs per 100 patient days. You might only have one, you might have multiple. Again, it depends on your project. And so, what are the primary drivers? So maybe one of the primary drivers is that residents are always ordering CBC with diff instead of CBC no diff, right? And that might be because, in terms of secondary drivers, because the CBC no diff is not available as an option in the admit order set. Maybe people assume that you always need a diff on your CBC, or residents or attendings aren't even sure when you need a diff or don't need a diff. Maybe there's an assumption that the attendings always want the diff. And so the residents and the medical students really want to make sure there's a diff on every CBC so that they can report it on rounds, right? Maybe another primary driver is ordering Q day on admission for everyone. Maybe this happens especially at night. And this could be because the night resident is worried the interns will forget to order labs. They're trying to make it easier for the day teams. They're assuming the attending will want labs on rounds. Maybe the attending actually does want labs on rounds every time, and maybe that's not appropriate, right? And then maybe another primary driver is that people are ordering CMP with like a Q day frequency and just letting it ride, right? And so, and the secondary driver might be that the CMP is indicated on admission, but it's never changed to daily BMP after stabilization, right? And so, again, you can see that this could get really big or stay really small. I included this in your project template as well. So that's it. When we have our live session, we will focus on, you'll have time to work more on your aim statement, flow map, chart data. Everyone's kind of in a different part of their process. I really want you guys to really get to a point where you at least have an aim statement, have some of your measures picked out, and then have started charting some data, and then start to fill out either the driver diagram or fishbone, or maybe both. Try out the QI template. Let me know what you think. Let me actually switch over to it so that I can kind of go over it. And I'll send this out with a link to this video too. And so this will be a PowerPoint, but yeah, you can, title your project, put in who's on the team. First slide would be your aim statement. So, put your aim statement here, current step, fill in your process flow map. Again, this is an example. So this would be your project. You would delete all this and then fill in these cells with what are your measures. There's a spot here to insert charts of your baseline data once you have them. In terms of analyzing the problem, again, this is an example. You can change the categories, but you can delete all this and fill it in with your project. Start to fill in the driver diagram. And then later on, I'll probably email out separate slides that you can insert here for some of what's coming down. And the hope is that my idea with creating this template, and I know it's coming halfway through, or not quite halfway through the project timeline, is that when this is done, you basically have your abstract, your poster, and a presentation all in one, and you'll be able to use this. You can make it look prettier, but you'll have something that you can utilize to present your work, both for grand rounds and for other kinds of scholarship. Let me stop my share. I know that went really quick. Again, feel free to reach out to me, any questions, and I look forward to seeing you all at the live session.